Hey,
Hi.
hi everybody. I just started the broadcast. This is my channel, Prince of Queens, and I am being joined by five lovely people for um for a men's rights red pill screening Q&A of Cassie Jaye's documentary that I have seen before, The Red Pill. Hopefully people have seen it, and I guess an audience of people in Minneapolis, Minnesota just watched it, and they are listening to us speak over some sort of PA system or something, I guess, and they are going to have some questions. So I'm joined by Sage. What's your last name, Sage?
Gerard.
Gerard. And Karen. What's your last name?
McFly.
That's right. And Janice Fiamengo.
Hi there.
And Derek is hosting the screening. Derek?
Yep. Hello.
Hi. And then there is the filmmaker herself, Cassie Jaye. So, Derek, why don't you take it away with your audience and the questions and stuff?
I'm going to disable my camera because I can't make my laptop face everyone. But does anyone have any questions in general? I want to throw out to everyone. Actually, I'll start with a couple that I have planned and then see if you guys think of any. All right. So the first thing I wanted to start with, so this is for Janice and Sage, because both of you have had experiences on college campuses, trying to speak about some of these issues and experiencing the backlash. So I just wondered if you would want to maybe talk a little bit about some of those experiences.
Okay, in what order would you like us to address it?
How about ladies first, ironically?
Why not?
Okay, well, I'll exercise my female privilege then. It's been difficult to speak about men's issues. I've tried at the University of Ottawa, which is my home university. I've tried at the University of Toronto. I've spoken at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. And the only time when I was able to speak without being drowned out by someone pulling the fire alarm or noisemakers and people singing the Communist Internationale was the time when I spoke at Kennesaw, Georgia at the conference that Sage organized. Other times I've had a lot of trouble even getting past the first sentence. There's a group at the University of Ottawa called the Revolutionary Students Movement that is rabidly pro-feminist and anti-male and believes that it's dangerous and a form of discursive violence to speak about men's issues. So they're pretty determined to shut me up. And I'm part of an organization called the Canadian Association for Equality. And we've organized a number of speakers about men's issues, and they've been there at nearly every one and have been determined to shut us down. So I guess it's fair to say that most university campuses across North America are extremely opposed to the discussion of men's issues. And the experience for most young men on college campuses is that they're told that their masculinity is toxic, and as happened recently at the University of Regina in Saskatchewan, Canada, they're invited to confess their sins of hypermasculinity at a masculinity confession booth. And that's just the most, I guess, extreme and ridiculous version of what's pretty popular nowadays, which is to have programs in toxic masculinity and the unlearning thereof. So it's a fairly difficult situation right now.
All right, and Sage?
The best way I could give you a bird's eye perspective of it is that I started my foray into activism and education in particular by making the one students' rights, the student organization for men's rights that really worked and could scale up nationally. It's kind of started when I was going to Kennesaw State University. This is a one of the 50 largest university campuses in the United States, and it's located about 30 miles north of Atlanta in Georgia. And I started by noticing they had a counseling group for men that they advertised as their support for men, emotional support and access to resources and things like that. But it was more of a psychological experiment where you were not allowed to socialize with other members outside of the group. And that put us in a pretty nasty situation because that was really the best we had. And there were programs that made it much more difficult for men to get the help they needed if they were homeless and needed access to a food pantry, if they needed services for IPV recovery and counseling, and I could go on. So I started a group on campus that was about lobbying the administration and reviewing the programs on campus in order to have those changed, pretty much by the letter of the student conduct or by adding new programs and reallocating budgets. The drama kind of picked up and became a problem when, of course, we ended up criticizing feminism on campus. I can't go into everything because that would I would be speaking for hours. But the gist of it was I had people who would go straight to the cops and make up police reports, make up reports saying that I was fantasizing about murdering women, that I was creating a hostile work environment. And interestingly enough, we even had a gender studies program and an interdisciplinary studies department that made actual political, like it's a game of Risk, like they're making real political moves to shut down the organization, such as the main one they did was try to remove our faculty sponsors by basically scaring them out. And for a little bit it worked, but we eventually survived. We held a conference and Janice was there, Karen Strawn, Paul Elam, Jonathan Taylor, and it went really well. And I think that over time, we ended up commanding a good bit of money, good bit of influence. And then, of course, came the day that I had to graduate. I couldn't be the head of that organization anymore by school policy. And no one really wanted to take the helm of it. So it ended up becoming more of we'll start chapters if somebody is interested in doing so on a national level. But that was my foray. It was lots of police reports, lots of drama, lots of lawyers, and it was all around lobbying efforts for male students in education.
Any questions you have on this topic?
The producer for the Red Pill film started out as a feminist, and it took her some time to transition into thinking about the issues differently. How do we create the atmosphere where someone can even have the time to think through the issues so that they can change their mind?
Did you guys hear that okay, or do you want me to repeat it real quick?
I heard it all right.
Yeah, so I guess the question for whoever wants to answer it is basically how do we foster an environment where it's easier for people to think about these issues and have the kind of transformative experience that Cassie had?
Yeah, how do we foster an environment? So does anybody have a good answer for that question? That's sort of a profound question.
Can you repeat the question? Because I couldn't hear Derek at all.
Oh, I'm sorry. So he was asking, with Cassie, she had an experience of transforming in her views, and the question is, are there any good ways you can think of where we can help facilitate this to make it easier for people to have this information and be able to take the time to learn these kind of things?
And hey, can I ask Janice to turn your volume down a little bit further, even?
Yes,
Thank you.
I will.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I could get the ball rolling on this and then pass it off. So yeah, it's not, it doesn't look like a too bright of a future when you think that it took me 3.5 years to not only interview 44 people from anywhere from 2 to 8 hours each, but also rewatched the interviews, transcribed the interviews, and that's when it finally started to sink in what men's rights activists were saying to me. So that probably sounds very grim for those like Janice who have been working in this field for so long, trying to get through to, you know, SJWs to have an open mind about these issues, and they, you know, they have a wall up. But I don't know what the answer is, but I do think giving people permission to challenge their beliefs, and I hope my film serves that purpose for other people, that now, you know, you could see that I did it, so it's maybe a more comfortable idea or a possibility for the viewers. Well, if she was able to challenge her beliefs, maybe I can go on a similar journey, or think about, do I have any biases of my own? And now we also see Lacey Green possibly seemingly open to challenging her feminist views and listening to anti-feminist perspectives. So if there's more people sharing that experience, I think it will become a possibility for more people to go through that journey. But that's pretty much all I have to say about that.
I would concur with that, because if you're dealing with an environment where you don't feel like you have permission and you feel like you're about to deal with some sort of retaliation, if you speak your mind or challenge your own beliefs, well, of course. I mean, if we were going to make an analogy to religion, if you're in a hardcore Southern Baptist area, then talking about atheism is probably going to get you ostracized. You're going to have a harder time sitting around the family dinner table. But I think that you can't make men's rights cool. And not now. It's not something that you can make fab, where people are all like, you're a men's rights activist? Really? That doesn't happen. So you have to be willing to, there is some level of risk associated with it. But I want to go ahead and talk about Anil Kumar's speech at ICMI 16, the International Conference on Men's Issues. This is over in London, and he has a huge following for it. And really what he did was, to foster that environment, was really they don't do a lot of activism. They actually just do more of just getting to know each other and have fun in each other's company. And that alone they fostered a community where they enjoy each other. And when ideas are challenged and they shape it and it becomes their own ideas, then it's a little easier. Because then if you go out and you say something, or you, in his words, bide your time for activist projects, it's not as scary, because now you got camaraderie. So I think you have to, don't make it an activism first. Don't make it activism centric. Make it just, you like each other, be friends, foster that, and eventually you'll want to support each other, and activism follows.
That's very in line with the way that I conduct myself. I believe we need to put the emphasis back on human rights rather than special interest groups, and I practice what I preach. I don't care if somebody's male, female, gay, straight, trans, black, white. If they're hungry, I want to feed them. I don't care what country they're from. I think once we put the emphasis back on true equality, egalitarianism, and human rights, that's when we'll start to mend things. And the first step, to thank you personally for that. I think it should be mandatory viewing. I think empathy. And I think that it's human nature to evolve, and we have to.
I wanted to say that I think that, Sage said something, is men's rights advocacy ever going to be cool? Maybe not. Maybe not. But right now we're at a very opportune moment, because feminism is uncool. Feminism is very uncool right now, after Hillary Clinton losing the election so tragically, trying so hard to have feminism be her selling point. And Lacey Green is kind of reconsidering her feminist views. She's a huge YouTuber, if people don't know who she is. She's has about 1,500,000 subscribers. And the biggest feminist blog in the world, Everyday Feminism, is probably going to go out of business within the next couple of months, which is kind of huge, because they publish something like an article a day practically, and they're the worst. They are so, if you guys ever want to know just about how bad feminist blogs can be. Go to Everyday Feminism. The things that they have on that blog are absolutely heinous. So one of the things to keep in mind is that feminism was trying to expand very, very hard over the, 2015 was the peak of feminists sort of trying to keep expanding and trying to like attack people for, wrong think and make public displays of, ruining people's lives and everything. And then it started to change in 2016. 2016, people started to get a little bit sick of that. And now it's sort of the aftermath. And one thing that I think people don't realize is that while so many people identify as feminists, only about 5% of them really know that much about feminist theory and feminist organizations and feminist history. And those 5% of people that actually know a lot about it and still consider themselves feminists, they're not very nice people. They are generally people that have a lot of hate in their heart. And they're not just going to attack men, they'll attack anybody that's around them. So all you have to really do is leave them to themselves, and those feminist true believers will eventually make the nice feminist, the 95%, our mothers and our sisters who call themselves feminists, will eventually realize, oh, that's what you people are actually like. I don't want anything to do with you. And, they're already suffering from a drastic PR problem. So, yeah, largely they will take care of it themselves by showing their true colors. And Janice, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself. I just unmuted you for the audio feedback I muted you for the audio feedback that we were having.
Sorry about that. Can I say, do you want to speak first, Karen?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that as people have taught me in the men's rights movement, our issue really is not just feminism. Our issue is the fact that we all live in cultures that feel a great deal more empathy naturally for women than for men. And when a woman is in trouble or a woman is crying or we hear about a woman's issue, both women and men tend to respond to that and want to do something about it. When men are in trouble and we see men suffering, it seems that both men and women recoil from that. And their response is not to feel empathy, but to feel repulsion. And so our problem is not just feminism, but this very deep-rooted empathy gap, as many people have called it. So I don't think very much about whether we are at a point now, whether our movement is growing, are we about to see a sea change, or is the tide turning? I hear a lot of people saying the tide's turning, we've finally reached the point when everything's going to change. The scales are going to fall from everyone's eyes. But I've been hearing people saying that for years. And I think actually we're nowhere near the point at which we're going to start recognizing the equality of men and men's rights generally. But I'm not that concerned about that. I'm interested in saying the truth. And I think that's really powerful in itself, and when other people get interested in saying the truth and seeing the truth, it only takes a few people sometimes to make a significant difference. So I'm not sure if the most important thing is necessarily to create a movement where everyone feels comfortable. I don't know if that's even possible. That's all. I'll mute myself.
Okay. Thanks. Does anybody else have any answers?
I'd like to talk about something that Janice mentioned, and that's female privilege. And it's funny because we've all viscerally rejected the idea of privilege because it's ludicrous. It's the oppression Olympics. However, when I hear females talk about being, oppressed or underprivileged, so when you know how to use female privilege, you're unstoppable. So once we acknowledge that, I think that will be a big part of it. I did a video on female privilege and it ended up being 20 minutes long, 40 minutes long, uncut. And I think once we acknowledge that and say, hey, both genders have problems, group on the planet has problems, and the smallest, most oppressed minority is the individual, regardless of any of their attributes. Once that clicks in, there might be hope for us. I don't know how we're going to get there though.
Awesome. So Derek, is anybody in the audience have another question?
Yeah, it doesn't know yeah.
Yeah, how do you see women in the movement helping to create more empathy for the men's movement?
Oh, women are leading the movement.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to start with that. I suppose we haven't heard from Karen yet, or I suppose if Prince, if you're about to talk, I don't want to be rude.
Oh, no, Karen, talk.
Can you repeat the question and what Sage said? I didn't fully get it.
The question was about women's involvement in the movement and how you see them leading, and specifically garnering more empathy for men.
I see the involvement of women as important in two ways. Even that's also why I've become very active in the Women Against Feminism movement, I would call it now, because we now have sort of several groups. I started taking part in the Women Against Feminism group, but now we have a few other female MIAs that's called Women Fighting Feminism. It's a bit more about actual activism and not just being against something. But what I wanted to say, we all know that when women speak about feminism, they are more likely to be listened to than men. But also there's another component which I find important with regard to the empathy gap, that we currently do have the problem that I think there is a lack of empathy for men from society in general, but also for women. And I think that it comes down to that, to feminist theory. And that's also why I'm so strongly opposed to feminism, even though some people who work within men's rights or especially fathers' rights groups. I was last weekend, I was at a fathers' rights conference. Some people said, oh, we don't need to criticize feminism, just focus on fathers' rights. And I say, no, we do need to criticize feminism, because feminism posited that men oppressed women. And if you actually believe that, then it's very logical that you wouldn't have empathy with men oppressed women. Then you obviously, why would you think about the problems think about their problems, or even value their achievements? Like, we know the terms male privilege. If you think someone is privileged and they've been handed everything on a golden platter, then you appreciate what they've done, what they've appreciated, what they've achieved in their life. And so I think it's really, really important to dismantle that man oppressed women. I think that's the only way to, for people to have actual empathy for men. And I think it's important that not just women do that because they are more likely to be listened to, but also I think, that's what I wanted to come back to. Sorry. That I think it's not, some people nowadays say it's almost we have this empathy gap because by nature women have, or everybody has less empathy for men than for women. And I think that's partly true, but I think in the past, actually women had more empathy for men than they have now, because there wasn't that belief that men oppressed women, but actually what men did. And I think we need to, not turn back the time, but get back to that thinking,
Also, I think drafts might, if the fact that your brother, your father, or your husband might be drafted for war, people might start to, they have the slogan, "Bring home our boys," and it's like, that's really personal, but we don't have that so much anymore. There hasn't been a draft in a very, very, very long time, and so the idea that men are sacrificing themselves for the greater good isn't so much present in contemporary culture.
Okay, I think I'd like us to quickly visit the conversation where it starts. How many of us here have been in a dysfunctional relationship? Because God, me.
Sure.
Like a really one where you are having those kind of ground zero fights where people, your partner is just yelling at you. It doesn't matter what you say. It's just nasty. Those are times for empathy. Those are times to calm down, get in the other person's shoes, and reason about it, right? I'd like to, how would each of us try to de-escalate? That's one step, de-escalate. Typically, if we're talking broad scale stuff, back in the civil rights movement, MLK had the idea of, well, making sure they would be in the presence of racists and generally crazy people and make sure it was caught on tape, everything that happened, so that the rest of the nation would empathize with what they perceived to be the underdog. It was all about managing perception then. But there still had to be that step of de-escalation. We've already had the step where we have plenty of footage showing we're dealing with batshit crazy people. But now, what do you do to de-escalate? What do you do to get out of that dysfunctional, endless cycle? And one strategy that I anticipate will work if it's
Sage.
given to you. If you're dealing with somebody who's yelling at you or giving you a hard time, which you will encounter if you're either doing you're participating in activism or you just end up on a really bad date, all you have to do is smile, distance yourself, and walk off. Recorder handy if necessary. But de-escalation. What do you all think would be good strategies for de-escalation? I think we need to focus on that.
I'll put in 2 cents and then I'll have to head out. But great question, Sage. I really like this. I think something that would really help is taking time before responding. And possibly because we live in this very quick conversational, whether it's Twitter or text, and everything's just very immediate and you don't want too much of a pause to pass before you respond, that if you have that kind of communication style, then all you're saying is things that you already know. You're not thinking in the moment or challenging yourself in the moment, your own views. So if there could be more time that passes before responding, so if you get into debate with a friend, maybe do it over email rather than Twitter, so you can have a couple days in between to really think about your response. I think that could lead to more progress and understanding one another rather than trying to convince the other person to just see your point of view, because you're not really willing to see the other person's point of view if you're just jumping in to get your immediate, rebuttal to them without thinking it through first. So I don't know if that's what you were thinking, Sage, but that was what I was thinking. But I have to head out, and it was so much fun to do this. It was really nice to see you all, and thank you everyone at the screening. Thank you so much for attending, and I hope you have a great rest of your time.
Thank you, Cassie.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Cassie.
Thanks, guys. Bye, have fun.
Bye.
In a moment of silence.
Well, I guess I didn't want to talk about
the star of the show's gone, and we can all go home.
No, my plan is to twist all of your arms and force you all to stay here till midnight.
Oh.
I can barely hear you, Derek.
What was that?
Yeah, Derek, speak more into the mic.
Okay, yeah, I have to lean in. I thought that was only for women leaning in, so that's the problem.
Okay.
Let's get into questions. Okay, we'll go to one of my questions.
Actually, I just wanted to second Sage's point about de-escalation, not just about being in like this gender conversation, but just the last couple of days, like you just read any type of news article at all, like inflammatory, like political opinions, and like it should actually be like implicit in our education about de-escalating scenarios, or at least like suspending them enough, as Cassie was suggesting. So that topic of de-escalation resonates just even in the last couple of days, very strongly.
And here, I'll try to echo that directly into that because I'm sure it might have been hard. But yeah, what he said was that a lot of this conversation about de-escalation echoes a lot of the larger political climate, and so that that's kind of reiterating the importance of it.
All right. So what's the question?
It wasn't a question.
He just wanted to say you had a really good point.
Oh, thank you. I do that sometimes.
yeah, I think he was saying, from what I could piece together, the de-escalation reflects a lot of the greater political things that are going on. Like we have Antifa and stuff like that, which are obviously not helping the situation. So, yeah.
Actually, maybe maybe it's like a skill that you need to deliberately cultivate. Like everyone ought to be inclined to cultivate that as a skill. Just knowing that escalation is like almost natural tendency.
Yeah, he said that knowing escalation is a natural tendency. It's like a skill you'd have to consciously sort of cultivate. And actually, that's very much, I think, what Cassie is talking about in her newest presentation. I don't know how many of you guys saw that yet, the Noetic Institute presentation she just did. Of course, Karen. You don't have that stuff. Any other questions? All right. So one question, because one reason I thought it was a great idea to bring, I guess, both Lex and Prince on here is because you guys talk a lot about like the culture and social attitudes and that side of it. So, and Prince had kind of brought up the question before, so I'm going to direct it at Lex right now. Lex, how do we make men's rights cool? Because I think you're the expert.
How do we make what cool?
Men's rights, or any of the men's issues, or really just the newer conversation on gender. How do we make it cool?
I have a rule, and it's something I've been not merely preaching but practicing for about 25 years. If you have no flies on you, what the hell are they going to say? They're presenting themselves and building their identities around being social justice warriors. In the meanwhile, they're acting like brown shirts. So if I'm working at soup kitchens, I'm rescuing animals, I'm known to be a good person, I have a solid reputation, there's no flies on me. And in that, I think it's up to women's rights cause, because they can call internalized misogyny until they're blue in the face. Their hearts that out. They don't say yes all women and then dismiss a woman, a survivor like me, by saying I have internalized misogyny because I won't listen to my feminist overlords or join their vagina cult. Listening to women, and I think that once we learn that we are one and that it's about human rights rather than men's rights, women's rights, and all this compartmentalized bull, then we will learn. And I am optimistic. Not all the time, but today I am. Sometimes.
So I wanted to add on. I said before, maybe men's rights will never be cool. I kind of think right now it is to a certain degree, at least on YouTube. There's definitely a YouTube subculture of people who are very, at least vehemently, kind of anti-feminists. Not necessarily people that will call themselves MRAs. But one thing, I'm a gay male, and I am one of the only gay guys that actively speaks about men's rights issues. One of the things that I've been thinking, and this is universal for both gay men as well as both male to female transgender people as well as female to male transgender people. Feminism has been actually very abusive to the gay male community. I can go on and on and on, and I do in my videos, but also to transgender women, because they say that they're not real women. And you can find people like Theron Meyer or Blair White who speak about that, as well as transgender males suffer very much emotionally from being around feminists and feminist culture. My friend Matthew C., who I believe is actually in the chat on this stream right now, he has a channel and he talks about that, and he has a video that's guested on my channel called, I think it's called Feminists Abuse Transgender Men. That all said, knowing that if you actually really learn about feminist theories and activist groups and the kind of things that they really sort of emotionally put so many LGBT people through, if more LGBT people started speaking out and we worked with sort of the social justice ethos about, like, hey, we want to stick up for minorities, and, a lot of, gay men and transgender men are men, and we're being abused in the same kind of ways. We are being abused in saying that we have toxic masculinity. We commit a lot of suicides. We are having a hard time on university campuses. And so if more and more LGBT people started to speak out, I think that would be really, really helpful in terms of having it be something, you know, because everybody has a stereotype that men's rights advocates are just, you know, fat, ugly, neckbeard, straight guys, and nobody cares about them. But people do care about, you know, minorities, minority privilege.
Okay, I'm going to go throw in my 2 cents here, but then I got to go. But first, in advance, thank you for having me on this stream. I really appreciate you all hosting this and getting the screen going.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Of course. So my short answer is I don't think you make it cool, at least not now. But if you were to make it cool, you think about how anything else gets cool. You give people a hook, and then you make it easy for people to make it their own, right? If you were one thing that's kind of inhibiting us, I think, and in the movement is our activity is largely online, right? Now, you can give people a hook with that by producing content, but the real kicker starts when you start doing it out and about in real life, which most people don't want to do because typically if you bring it up in real life, somebody throws something at your head. So what you have to do is try to make it more accessible. Make it accessible, and then people will want to come in and be like, I want to be a part of this, and then they'll get their ego involved a little bit too, I think. If they make it theirs, they kind of get a little bit of emotional investment in it. I mean, sometimes when people are given that room to grow, to define it for themselves without thinking of it in terms of a specific movement, but think of it in terms of the issue and their interpretation of it, then you get more diversity and you get more growth. And hell, we see evidence of that right here. We've got different demographics talking about issues that interest them, and they all view it different ways, which is great. And that's kind of what you want, right? And God, those stupid little fidget spinner things that got stupid viral over the past few weeks, it's just a little thing that spins, but the way people grabbed it, it was so easy and they made it their own. That dynamic is what gets you that growth you're looking for and what makes it cool, even for just a little bit. But anyway, that's all the time I've got, but thank you again for having me, and it was wonderful to see you all, especially some of you I've seen before. So thank you again, and have a good night.
Bye, Sage.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Sage. Bye.
Well, I would like to add to what Sage just said. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to add to what Sage just said about taking it into the real life and actually meeting people in real life. In that respect, I really have to thank Cassie for making the film, because it's a shame she's gone now, but I have to thank her anyways, because in the UK we organized quite a few screenings, and there really people got together, and there were lots of people that I already knew, obviously, who had been involved in this before, but there were lots of new people coming who had never heard about these things before, and we went to the pub afterwards and we talked about all of these issues, and people connected. And I think it is in large part due to the Red Pill that definitely in the UK there's quite a there's more of a movement developing now of people actually meeting in real life and connecting and talking about the issues, people coming together who have experienced similar things or who have just observed things, because you can see what's happening if you have two eyes in your face, I think. And sometimes amazes me how people cannot see these things. And one thing I wanted to say, when you were talking about gay men and your friend Matthew Lai that you're connected with, he's also written that book.
No, actually, that's just for the record. It's not. My friend's name is Matthew C. But yeah, Matthew Lai. I know. Yeah, continue with what you're saying.
Just wanted to say that book that's called The New Gay Liberation: Escaping the Fag End of Feminism. I think that's a really good book that should be read by lots of people. The book, the New Gay Liberation: Escaping the Fag End of Feminism. It's basically a history book of everything you need to know about how feminism has basically, in so many words, bullied its way into controlling the gay male community by way of making all pride parades, LGBT organizations, they have to be feminist. And it's actually deeply harmful towards gay men, but there's basically no way to escape that.
And yeah, they read the book. It's really, it's good.
Well, the thing is, when they made the gay movement feminist, also what they did, they try to equalize the struggle of gay men with that of lesbians, which is in no way comparable. Especially in Germany, we had an incident a few years ago where they put up a memorial for the gay men who were murdered during the Holocaust, who were put into concentration camps and such. And it was mainly gay men. Also, lesbians suffered some as well, but they weren't really put into concentration camps. But the feminists in Germany, they lobbied for them to be acknowledged on the same scale in that memorial, and actually it's a rewriting of history.
Yeah, I would actually say that it's even not just that they are trying to equate it, they're trying to if you actually really look at the way that feminists treat gay men, they usually say that queer women have it worse, that lesbians are doubly oppressed by both being a lesbian and by being a woman. And so it's this, you know, it becomes a simple game of arithmetic, and you don't actually, if you don't actually look into the numbers, then it seems like it might make some sense. Of course, if you actually look into things like the FBI report, you will find that over 60% of all hate crimes done over domestic violence, not domestic, sorry, slipped up words. All hate crimes committed based on gender or sexuality are committed against cisgender gay men. The only people that are more likely to get to be bashed based on their, you know, like by a stranger based on their gender or sexuality are female or male to female transgender people. So a trans woman is very likely to get bashed, but that's also not because people actually see her as a woman. They're not doing it because they hate women. They're doing it because they don't think she's a woman. They think she's a man. So
absolutely. I also think that's why gay men had all these problems historically. It's because they are men and they're attracted to men, not because they're gay, but yeah.
So it's once more gay men start to really look into the data, and I've had a profound experience, you know, trying to kind of red pill gay men, and it's really hard to get them to look into the data because they can very easily ignore feminists because they're gay men. They don't really ever have to talk to feminists. They hang out at gay bars. There's not that many women around, but gay men love women. They have sisters, they have female friends, and they idolize women. They love female singers and that kind of a thing. You know, gay men they have an automatic reaction to avoid looking into men's rights. They think that they're like, oh, but I like feminists. I like, you know, that this is the opposite of feminism. You must hate women. But then once they actually look at the issues, then I think it can have a very profound effect. But it's particularly hard to get gay men to look into it.
If you want to see the divide between lesbians and gay males, I want you to go to a bar, and I go to a lot of bars because I throw shows for a living, and watch what happens when two girls kiss at a bar. Everyone's like, yeah, ooh, that's hot. Now, when two men kiss, they're risking stepping outside and having the living shit beaten out of them. Pardon my French. If you touch your male friend in public, you're having your sexuality questioned with your male friend, or everything about you is questioned. But if you're a chick, you can hold hands, you can touch each other, you can even make out at a bar, you can even go have sex with one of them, and you're just experimenting, and you're not ruined forever by some people's standards. So there's more female privilege for you. Can't hear you.
All right, Janice, did you want to weigh on this topic? Otherwise, I have another question. Unless we have one. All right, let's go ahead. So one thing that's conspicuously missing from this documentary is a certain word, and it's the word gynocentrism. And there's a lot of debate on this subject in this community. Some people think that it's kind of like the men's rights, gender-shifted version of patriarchy, and that it's just as bad, whereas others think that it's actually a very useful framework. So I guess I'd like to get each of your guys' perspective on whether or not you think gynocentrism is a helpful or useful concept.
Can somebody explain the word to me? Gynocentric is in pertaining and hyper-focused on women in general?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
basically what it
Aaron can give a good explanation of it, right?
Anyone want to take this one on first?
Okay, I would say really quickly that it is very dangerous to bring up the concept of gynocentrism. And I think that it's because, in my perception, it's very dangerous to bring up the concept of gynocentrism to the average person because the human race is instinctually, based on biology, gynocentric. It is a biological imperative to take care of women because without women, we can't reproduce. If 90% of your women die as a tribe, you probably weren't going to survive, but the reverse is not true. So humans are instinctually gynocentric, both men and women. Therefore, if you start attacking humans for being instinctually gynocentric, you're attacking their instincts. So it's very dangerous to do that. And if you do bring it up, just be very, very cautious about how you bring it up, is what I would say.
Well, I've been trying to explain it to people in the way that it's not nowadays. It's accepted that biologically we have a craving for sugary and fatty foods because in the past that served us well. So my colleague at work was the other day saying how much his children like to drink Coca-Cola, and so I said to him, look, it's the same way with feminism. Everyone supports it because it says it's pro-women, and that's for the very same reason, because in the past that actually served us well because we needed to look more after the lives of women because that was necessary for sustaining the species. But now it's actually become a hindrance because now it's actually hindering our progress and creating problems in the same way that sugary and fatty foods have created obesity and people are dying of heart attacks. And so we should really start paying attention to that and just feeding into it so much and catering to that instinct that was beneficial in the past and helped us, but now it's making our society unsustainable, really, because really I think if this goes on much longer with relations between the sexes deteriorating and men getting depressed from what's happening, because I do think this is having an effect on all men, not even just those that are directly affected and that they get alienated from their children or falsely accused or all these things. But I think just hearing all these awful things about yourself every day, I think this is having an effect, and I think that's not sustainable any longer, and that's what people need to realize.
By the way, I just want to say that I think that her answer was better than mine, and that this is why we need female MRAs.
Anyone else on that one?
I think that you can respect and cherish and protect other groups and any individual without making it centric. That's what I think. I think everything is so, and also by Tumblr law, wouldn't that exclude trans women since they're not biologically viable to reproduce? And if women are so empowered and strong, then why are they turning around and being like, oh, I'm afraid to walk at the streets at night, I need a safe space? So it's just it's contradiction after contradiction. This is not the hear me roar that I was raised with Camille Paglia and my mother, professional victimhood, and it has more contradictions than anything that I've ever encountered in my life. It presents like fundyism, like religious zealotry, and the cognitive dissonance must be actually painful to them, and that's why they freak out. That's my theory. And I do have a solution for this. I'll go into it later perhaps, but I'm glad that other people are seeing it, suffice to say, and I think the red pill needs to be seen more so we can maybe develop some empathy for people other than, this Madonna whore thing that they're supposed to be against, but they've upheld and perpetuated. So it's very contradictory.
And Janice, did you want to comment on gynocentrism?
Yeah, sure. I was sort of trying to get at that idea of gynocentrism when I was talking about the empathy gap. And so it does seem to me to be a really important issue in that, there are so many phenomena in our society where even apart from a specifically feminist framework, we simply notice that when women are suffering, people care about it. When men are suffering, the response is to turn away. And so I think it can be helpful without even explicitly evoking either the concept of gynocentrism or an anti-feminist framework necessarily, but in speaking to people simply to point out the ways in which in contemporary discussions about a whole range of issues, even in cases where it's obvious that men are suffering more, we tend to erase the suffering of men. Just for an example, I was reading stuff about suicide recently, suicide statistics, and I came across some statistics about teen suicide, and it was really remarkable in that the discussion was gender neutral for the entire fact sheet that I was reading, except twice it mentioned the gender of the teens. And once was to say that young women had a fully developed suicidal plan 4 times more often than young men. The other was to say that young women experience body issues more often than young men do, and that body issues are one of the major drivers of suicidal thoughts. And so just reading that fact sheet, one would have thought that young women committed suicide at a much higher rate than young men. And of course, probably all of you know that the opposite is true. And that in fact, the reason that young women have a fully developed suicidal plan that they talk about with people is because they're able to talk with people, and that's why they don't commit suicide as often as young men do. But you know, I mean, it's crazy. There are so many other examples like that where the fact of male suffering is overtly denied in some sort of newspaper report or whatever it happens to be. And so I think that's an important part of trying to communicate the message that if we really care about equality, if we're interested in humanity and caring about everyone, then we have to be able to recognize the ways in which our culture is biased against men and just doesn't see men's humanity. And of course that is, as you were saying, Karen, it's partly so much because of at least 50 years of feminist training has taught us to see men as the ones who cause problems and women as the ones who have the problems caused by men. And therefore we have so much trouble seeing men's humanity and caring about them. But, you know, I mean, even if we do manage to change perceptions in that way, we have now instituted all sorts of inequalities that are really, really serious. Sonia Starr, for instance, has done a study of criminal sentencing disparities that are really remarkable, the differences between men and women in terms of who is more likely to be arrested in the first place. Women are far less likely to be arrested. Women are far less likely to be charged. Women are much more likely to be able to work out a plea deal. Women are far less likely to be convicted. If they are convicted, she's done a study of convictions for the almost exact same crime, as much as that can be worked out. Men receive sentences that are 6 times greater in severity than women. So there's these disparities all throughout the way our society treats men and women. So, I mean, I guess just talking about the fact that, you know, and we now have these conversations where many activists want to make it impossible for women to go to jail at all because they say that it's terrible for children to be without their mothers. Yet no one cares about the fact that children are being denied their fathers. So yeah, that I think whether we use the term or not, I don't think it matters. I think that the phrase empathy gap is quite a useful one for speaking about these kinds of disparities. I'm going to have to go, I think. Thanks so much for allowing me to participate in this conversation. I have to get to bed, but
thanks so much for joining us, Janice. It was wonderful to chat with you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Sleep well.
Oh, sorry, before you go, is there anything upcoming that you're working on that you want to let us all know about?
Oh, me? I'm working on my book. My book, Sons of Feminism, should be coming out soon. And it's a wonderful book, a collection of personal essays by men answering the question, what is it like to grow up in a feminist culture, or to be a male in a feminist culture?
Oh, I want to write that essay. I should write that essay for myself.
Well, I'm going to have a second edition maybe, so
oh yeah,
in touch about that.
Awesome, I'd love to.
Okay, thank you.
Looking forward to the book. See you later.
See you later.
Yeah. Good night.
Good night.
All right. See, any questions you have there right now? I got a couple more. Yeah, because I think that we're getting pretty close to that 1 hour mark. So I appreciate you guys hanging out here this long. There's one question that I really want to ask that I think is very appropriate for each of you. What was your red pill? Was it one big horse red pill, or was it many small little red pills? What got you into this mess?
I have a very specific one. I was a member of a online. Okay, there's this thing called the gay male. It's a gay male thing called the Radical Fairies, and they own land in various different places, and they also have online forums, and it's become kind of a cultural identity since the 70s. And I know a lot of these people, and I've gone to a few different land of them a few times, and it was originally started to be just for gay men. Only gay men, no straight guys, no women, period. That's all it was for gay men. Over recent years, feminists demanded that they be included, and then they have taken it over and they hold it hostage, and they frequently ban men from their own land and their own forums. And when that started happening, I was like, what is going on? This is like one of the only things ever that was designed to be for only gay men. How are there lesbian feminists now banning men left and right for questioning them? And they seem to have all the power. And so I then began researching feminism, and that was my red pill kind of moment. Once I realized, I was like, no, something's seriously wrong if they're doing this to gay male spaces. Now we have to watch what we say in our own space because of some feminist. Like, that makes no sense whatsoever. So yeah, that was what the straw that broke the camel's back for me.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
Karen, you want to go?
Actually, not really, because I don't really have any red pill moment in that sense, because I mostly, I don't know, I noticed these things already as a child when I was little, maybe because I was bullied at school by other girls. So that's also why I've noticed that a few friends I have, female friends that I have, who had the same experience, that they were bullied at school, they never thought of women as their natural allies, and this sort of community of women that feminism has sort of posited, that there's this group of women and that group of men, and we are sort of antagonists. But yeah, so when I first heard about feminism, I started reading women's magazines, and I was 13, 14, going for all these magazines at my aunt's place. I just thought that's not reality. That's the real world is different. What they are saying there. I had encountered, yeah, awful men and boys, but also awful women and girls, and yeah, this dichotomy between men and women that they were trying to, yeah, portray there. I just thought it doesn't exist in the real world, and so I basically never started reading women's magazines because I went through all of them and thought that's not reality. And yeah, so basically was mostly trying to ignore everything that said women on it until there was the Yes All Women thing on Twitter 3 years ago, when I thought I can't ignore it anymore, because I thought they're speaking in my name and I don't agree with the things they are saying. Things like, yes, all women are afraid to take public transport or walk down a street lest they be attacked by some man. I thought, that's not true. I'm not afraid to walk down a street because some man might attack me. That's not real life. That's when I started to, actively comment on newspaper articles on Facebook, on the Facebook page of the Guardian or somewhere, to say that I disagree with this stuff. And that's when I started to meet like-minded people. And when I found out about The Myth of Male Power, someone recommended that book there, and then I listened to the audiobook, and I was in a complete daze for a few days. I thought, wow, there's someone else who sees the world like I do. Because I just never believed. Just when I saw that title, I thought, wow, that sounds like good stuff, because I had never believed that men have all the power, because that's never how it looked for me. Like, even nowadays, even in school system and in nursery school, kindergarten, as we have in Germany. Like,
yeah. Oh, I want to say
even then I could see that women have all this. And so how can they say children were just very small and getting their first impressions of the world, and everything is by women? So how can they say that men have all this power over people?
I had a real quick point about this is just advice for if you're ever talking to a feminist and she says, basically, oh yeah, everything that's ever gone wrong in the world is the fault of men, and men don't want to protect women, they oppress women, blah blah blah. One of the easy things to say to them is that, well, you know that there's been entire wars fought over the protection of women, right? And they say, well, yeah, but who started those wars? Who started those wars? It was men. If they ever say men are responsible for all war, the best thing to tell them is, no. Do you know what usually started the war? Scarcity. And the men who started the wars were generally wanting to feed their wives and children, because there wasn't enough to go around. So.
Good point. And also in the UK, there was the White Feather campaign. That's why the group Women Fighting Feminism. I put up the slogan, "This time the white feathers are for the ladies," meaning that women should start speaking out against feminism, especially not so much feminist women, but actually, like, we know, the population that agrees with, that calls themselves feminists is very small. It's very small, actually, but lots of women don't agree with feminists, but they don't actively speak out. So I say, this is like Professor Peterson said. He said that women need to rein in their crazy sisters or something like that. So I think it is time for women to speak out against feminism and sort of, take part in this not gender war, but ideological war, really. That's,
I can say I didn't, it never even really occurred to me to look into men's rights until I realized how many female men's rights advocates there were.
That's encouraging.
So Lex, do you consider yourself red-pilled? And if so, do you have a red pill moment?
I got quite a few red pills, but I'm going to give you condensed the 3 biggest, hardest to swallow red pills. So as a lot of you know, I used to be a street kid. I mean, I got broken teeth. I'm scarred head to toe. I had a hard life. I was on the streets for 10 years, a little longer, actually. I was a working girl. I was a junkie. I've been clean for 14 years now. And I've gotten my shit together. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this. And
Yes.
All right. I witnessed with my own eyes, not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, a girl would get, broken up with or have a spat with a man. And I watched with my own eyes her saying, I'm going to say he raped me, and then beat him up and turn him into an outcast. And this disgusted me to the point that in my family, because there are street families, we kind of employed female regulators, because a woman could attack a man viciously with a weapon, and if she so much as broke a nail, then you call the cops or you tell somebody else, and he would be labeled, smeared as a wife beater. His name would be mud. He'd possibly be jailed. So we literally existed for our brothers, that if a woman steps up, he can't hit you, but I can. So that's what it came down to. Is I saw so many examples of women knowingly using this female privilege, and to think, to believe all women and to imply, are we so naive that we think that because you have a vagina, you're not capable of being manipulative or evil? I could ruin either of you men with a Facebook post. That's female privilege. I could arbitrarily pick someone and say that you raped me, saying believe all women, that I would personally and manipulatively employ to make your life a living hell and try to destroy you. That was my first red pill, that realization. I guess that's a couple red pills. But the last straw for me was having all of these feminists telling a woman like me, a survivor, been through captivity, I've been through torture, I've been through street life, telling me that I was a victim. And when I said, no, I'm not a victim, don't try to project that on me, they basically dismissed me by saying I had internalized misogyny, and they'd infantilize me like, I was like a baby that needed to be educated. And to say that to a woman like me, who pretty well embodies everything feminism used to and should stand for, is fucked up and sad. I come from the Hear Me Roar generation. Anything. I was out on the streets. I lived there. I wore really provocative clothing and still do because I feel like it. I've gone toe to toe. I've dealt with the worst of society. I don't need people on Tumblr protecting me because I'm a strong, capable human being. And that has nothing to do with my gender. That has to do with my character, my strength, my training, my confidence. So my recommendation for everybody out there, if you're a woman and you feel afraid, take your vagina out of the quotient. You're more than a vagina. You're a person. You can be as capable and strong as you want to be. If you feel unsafe, that's not because of the patriarchy or your gender. That's because you need to work on yourself and find your strength. Whether you're male or female, trans, whatever, you got to find your strength. So that's my message. And I believe the key to solving all of this is every time a person that's a minority, that these people base their identities around advocating, steps up and says that's bullshit, part of their empire crumbles. If a black person says these black supremacy groups are garbage, part of it is destroyed. Trans people like Blair White, who's fantastic, when they step up and say, nope, look at how transphobic they are towards her when she disagrees with their ideologies. Look at how misogynistic. Oh yeah, the final red pill was when they freaking threatened to dox me, took my pages down, basically witch hunted me because I dared criticize feminism. So that's going to be my final statement. When you're posting yes, all women, but then you're attacking a woman like me and trying to make her life a living hell because I disagreed with your religion, that's when shit gets personal, and that's when the red pill is shoved so far down my throat that I will never call myself a feminist again. In fact, I'll call myself Lex, and that's about it. Then I ranted there, and I'm sorry.
All right. Well, I think we're about ready to wrap things up. I just wanted to ask one more question for each of you. What do you think was the most powerful, the most powerful part of the film for you, or your favorite part of the film?
Haramboko for me. That's good.
It was a while when I saw it. I saw it many months ago, so I don't have it fresh in my memory. But I definitely had no idea how horrible male circumcision was until I saw the actual footage, and I was like, oh my god. Like, I was not circumcised, and I was like, thank god I wasn't after watching that.
Yeah, you should watch Stefan Molyneux's presentation on that. Or Elephant in the Hospital. That's another really famous presentation that's gone around.
I've watched it now 5 times, and each time I have a different favorite part of it. I like one part more than the other. But in general, actually, what I like most about the film really is that it portrays men's rights activists, and especially the people who have been active in the men's rights movement for some time, really, it portrays them honestly, objectively, and as human beings, really, because I've seen so many media misrepresentations. Well, not so many, but for instance, when there was the first international conference on men's issues in Detroit, I watched all the presentations online because they were all uploaded. And afterwards, I think there were 2 media reports coming out on GQ and another one. And I read them and I was just absolutely shocked because I thought they've been to a different conference, but I hadn't been there, but I had seen all the presentations. And they completely dragged everyone who'd been there through the mud. And it was horrible to read, really, because it amazes me why people would even do such a thing. So when I first sat in the cinema, when I first saw the film, that was here in Berlin, where there was actually the European premiere, and saw an honest representation, that was sort of quite emotional for me. And that's really something that Cassie has achieved, and that I'm really very grateful to her for doing. Because these people have done amazing work. Everyone who's in the film, whether that be Paul Elam, Aaron Patsy, Janice, who was here just now, Sage, and they deserve to be portrayed, honestly, and as a people that they are. And it was about time, really, that was done. And yeah.
Is there anything else you want to talk about? Or we've been here for quite a while. Okay. So I think that we're about ready to wrap things up, because I think I've had you guys on here for about an hour now. And thanks again, because I know that we started a little bit late and that it's even later for a lot of you guys, except for Karen. Well, I guess she's technically in tomorrow. It's like 6 in the morning or something stupid over there.
It's 6 in the morning now. I'm going to go back to bed.
Yeah, I appreciate
it was
it
great
so
to be
much.
part of this.
Yeah, I'm really happy I was able to get all of you guys into here, and I was really happy we had minimal technical issues, and extremely happy that no feminists tried to shut us down or give us drama or anything. So as much as maybe we were extremely critical for the last few hours, I want to at least throw them that bone, that we didn't have that kind of drama here.
Hey,
Also, Lex, you want to show us the puppy?
Yeah, hold on.
I just wanted to say before I shut down, for Lexi's rant, one of my subscribers donated $50 to me directly. Whoa. And they said, preach it, Lexi. It's such a joy to see somebody who's been at the bottom, crushed into the dirt, and kept rising up until you rose above it. I can't imagine being that strong and having to hear that you're a fragile little victim. And because he sent me the $50 because of that, I have no problem sending half of it to you if you want me to give me your PayPal after this is over. So.
That's absolutely wonderful, and did that. Thank you. It's going to go right to puppy food. Because this beast eats.
All right, I guess we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
On behalf of the Twin Cities Med Center, I want to thank all of you for coming out.
Okay, I'm going to stop the broadcast.
All of you for staying. I think it's